You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
Get that bitch a couple of sucrets. That is what you call a non sequitur. Have you ever heard a line, a phrase, a lyric, a bar, if you will, from a song and it just stuck in your head so much and it becomes this thing where there was some part of the song and the line and just the way it was said over the beat where it was just almost hypnotic and it just stuck in your motherfucking head and it becomes something you say irrationally where it doesn't even make sense anymore. It becomes your reaction to any news brought across your desk, good, bad, or indifferent. And you need to be careful about that. You need to maintain a grasp on the increasingly thin line that is the imaginary world in your head and reality for a whole lot of different reasons, and I have a whole lot of larger examples for that point later on. But first, to wrap up my get that bitch a couple of sucrets line, my point why I start with this is because I can get hung up on phrases. I can get mentally obsessed with some element of a lyric in a song, and it becomes everything I say and think. And if you're not careful, you can find yourself responding inappropriately to a question like, hey, Colin, do you know if the printer is out of magenta? And if you're not careful, your response could be, I don't know. Get that bitch a couple of sucrets. You know, shout out DJ Quick. And I don't give a fuck if you didn't find that funny because that's actually, you know, I was dangerously close to saying that to a person. I might not have actually uttered those words out loud, but for the sake of comedy, I did and I lost my job. But I was this close to just quoting DJ Quick in the workplace. Colin, are we out of a 8x11 poster? I don't know, sweet black pussy. All right, well, speaking of sweet black pussies, the juice is loose. That is absolutely right. Hey, Twitter world, it's gay Huey Newton. I'm out of prison. That might have been too many jokes on top of each other, but if you weren't picking up what I was putting down, Jussie Smollett has been released from prison, thank God. Now, I am not one for people to be held in prison innocently. I'm against the death penalty. I am not quick to convict anyone of anything. I am generally on the side of fuck what the establishment is saying. I think I've made that pretty clear. I think it's very plausible and possible that average people can be scapegoated by institutions like the police, like the state police, like the FBI, like the cast and producers of Empire and Terrence Howard. It is incredibly possible for people to be targeted by all of those groups. However, in this instance, I just don't think any of those apply. And despite all the bullshit I talk about, there's plenty of reasons to murder people, being just generally swift in my judgment and execution of what should happen to people because I think I know what is best. I probably don't, but I do, and I will not be convinced otherwise. But the point is, I am very, very slow and worrisome in regards to locking people up for the rest of time on the off chance some element of the trial was unjust. But again, Jussie, based at this point just on your speech that you gave not but 2 weeks ago, where you claimed as if you were a victim of epic proportions. You were acting as if you were ball gagged in court. And you probably should have, if not for the fact you would have liked it, because the words that came out of your mouth were offensive to anybody across any political spectrum of any skin color. And worst of all, your one-man show was not even logical. None of it made any sense. And somehow, some way, people keep especially powerful people, keep applying all of their favors and influence and pulling strings to do everything they can to prop up and feed in to the dramaturgy, theater, bullshit, high school shit in this guy's head that at this point is just costing the motherfucking FBI money. How much longer will that be tolerated? You waste the FBI's money. You waste the FBI's money. You waste the money of the people that are okay with a whole host of shit, like groups of people based in Florida trafficking kids, or injecting people with, fake medicines and treatments and actually giving them syphilis. The FBI is cool with a whole bunch of shit. The FBI is cool with spending money to help people infiltrate the motherfucking White House during an election, not just last year. But for some reason, this guy wasted the money of the city of Chicago, which is a city who's known for its upright integrity within government spending, and federal money investigating a purported hate crime, which was committed by his Nigerian masturbating partner. All I wanted to do was never think of this guy ever again. We cannot escape him. He cannot be incarcerated. He would have, I don't even know if it would be enough to say Jussie needs to become transgender and murder someone with his car in an accident. I don't even think that would be enough to send him to prison at this point, because if you did that, he has a shot at fucking ESPN's Woman of the Year. This has sounded it way more right-wing than I'd like to sound, and am, actually. I'm really not the guy who does this or thinks this, but it just is like my knee-jerk reaction to things is I really, really swear, and I believe me, I am taking into consideration the idea that I am too close to the situation and it's my own prejudice, but I swear to you, things have gotten weirder, right? Things have gotten way stranger. And the alt-right was the first term that was relatively new in terms of a political ideology in many years. But I think the alt-right, most of the time, at least when we're talking about politics, any group that emerges or ideological school of thought that emerges is most of the time a reaction to something. It's not just this thing that happens out of nowhere. Why would a group show up with clearly defined alternative points of view other than the fact they were reacting to an increase in fucking strange behavior? Do you understand what I'm saying? So that would lead you to believe that if we have an alt-right, that meant the left was getting a little too left, right? That's really crazy. Like, this is such a deep and intense and academic conversation I was beginning to have. But then when you think about the words objectively on paper, I just said, well, the right got more right because the left was too left, right? I don't know if we're actually even meant to understand any of this. When you just objectively look at the words you just said back, you logically piece together the definitions that are accepted by society correctly, and yet, reading them back, the court reporter would say, what is this child talking about? Left, right, left, right, left, right. That's a country? That doesn't make no damn sense. And you know what else doesn't make no goddamn sense? The fact Jussie gets to see the sunshine again. I would be okay with locking him in a hole for the rest of his life at this point. I would be okay with him permanently taking a vacation at the beautiful Cuban beachfront timeshare of Guantanamo Bay. I would be all right with that. I would be okay with trading a few prisoners in Guantanamo Bay back to Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, if it would mean we never, for the love of all that is holy in this world, hear from Jussie Smollett ever again for all of time. And I don't mean to pile on to Jussie unfairly. I mean, who among us hasn't considered staging a hate crime when they were being slowly written off of a show that was cool several years ago? Who hasn't had that thought? But I think it's what pisses me off the most about it is not only just the divisiveness that I don't even think he's comprehending that he's creating among people, but it's the pure silliness of the thing that is being taken seriously during a time that is very serious. If this was the 90s and everyone had a credit card with no limit and we had a president playing the saxophone on Arsenio Hall or some shit and there weren't really a ton of problems in the world, I could maybe find Jussie's plight a tad bit more palatable. But in a time when gas is approaching the cost of a Bitcoin and Vladimir Putin has abandoned logic in his poetic quest for world domination, there is a new coronavirus strain that is gosh darn right, a new one. China's being China. The weather's weird. We're affecting the clock with daylight savings. All of that, we're affecting space-time in a negative way right now. And yet, a good 35% of the media is talking about the victim, Jussie Smollett, who was caught in a lie in a noose, covered in bleach, with his Nigerian masturbating partner. And believe me, I appreciate the absurdity of what I just said. I am all for not taking something seriously. I can appreciate a good laugh and a time when you shouldn't. But even I have limits. Even I have a point where I think maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should be serious. Maybe I should turn it off. Maybe I shouldn't stage a hate crime. Maybe I shouldn't report a podcaster who just launched a YouTube page. You should check it out, Colin Coyle Podcast on YouTube. All the episodes are there, all the back ones, and interviews. But maybe you shouldn't report an episode on a new YouTube channel for COVID misinformation when you're a disgruntled podcaster who's much more famous, who steals fucking junk. Dry snitch. And a fat bitch. But seriously, check out the YouTube page. Anyway, I'm all for appreciating the absurdity. But there comes a time when there are real things that have real consequences. And absurdity is a luxury. Absurdity is something you get to think about and label when you're French and you get to have academics and there aren't really problems because you don't get involved in conflict. And then you could write things like The Stranger, or you could be fucking Sartre with your Coke bottle glasses and look like a frog. You can be an intellectual who can just think about the absurdity and the existentialism of things. But you can't when there's fucking bombs going off, when there's gas prices affecting people to the point of losing their jobs. Did you know that just this past year in America, more people benefited or gained money from the property value of their homes than they did their actual job? More people financially benefited from the value increase of their home than the actual work they did with their time on Earth. More people received money from a thing they've already spent money on and live in that is quietly being bought up by a corporation like BlackRock, sister corporation Blackstone buying Neil Young's catalog. More people made money from that company from selling their house than they did earning money with their time. That's serious. That is bad. That's a red flag. If you're someone worried about AI and robots and whatnot like that, that should be something really piquing your interest. But again, it's not. We're worried about if Jussie was a victim of racism during a blizzard in Chicago because he was on Empire and ran into a Trump fan from Nigeria. Again, hilarious, I know, but it's not the time. It simply is not. The president, by the way, Joe Biden, in a speech, speaking of motherfucking absurd, in a speech today where he signed a bill that, gave money to programs that helped women who were victims of domestic violence, things like, it was a pro-women's bill. It's March. It's what matters. You know how the months go. It's March. It's all about women. That's all who we care about. If you go to last month, it was African Americans. That's who we care about for that month, and then it's women. And then if in April is actually Autism Awareness Month. So it's actually blacks, women, and autistic people. That's the value here as we enter the new year, every calendar year. But anyway, so Joe Biden specifically said in a speech in which he was, championing women. I should probably give you the exact quote, because if I just sum it up, you're not going to believe me. You're going to think there's absolutely no way a president would have said that after signing a bill, supporting women. But in the interest of truth and reality and absurdity, Joe Biden said, and I quote, I bet everyone knows somebody that in an intimate relationship, what happened was a guy takes a revealing picture of a naked friend or whatever in a compromising position and then blackmails. That classic pickle everyone finds themselves in, or you yourself may have found yourself in, with a naked picture of someone and you just can't help but blackmail them. You know that feeling. So it's relatable that Joe would think that, sure. It makes perfect sense. But it's a little weird, you must admit, for Joe to say that during a benefit after signing a law specifically designed to protect women. To then say, well, everyone knows that there's just this guy who ends up taking pictures to blackmail women. This is on the heels of the White House and Press Secretary Ginger, who, no matter what she says, part of me is always going to side with her. They were questioned about that old pesky laptop that Biden left in Delaware, the younger Biden, that is. And you can just say Biden because it doesn't really matter which one you're referring to because they all marry each other's wives anyway, so who cares to get it right? But Hunter Biden left that old pesky laptop in Delaware, and some people argued whether or not it was even real. Some people claimed it had proof of the strange Ukrainian connection to an oil company that Hunter had named Burisma. Keep in mind, World War III is about to start over the Ukraine. Very interesting. But Jen, press secretary, had no comment in regards to that laptop. And then not but 24 hours later, old Joe telling you about, every now and then there's blackmail material that someone does. I'm not saying I'm talking about my son because I'm senile and I'm not positive where I am, but what I do know is that I have about 50% of my brain left and I just associate thoughts with things, and that did happen, evidently. Pay no attention or mind or even consider the diary, the purported diary. That's just crazy, outlandish, right-wing nonsense. But the laptop's real. That we're now allowed to say because the New York Times said it. But a diary, that's just crazy. Dog, none of this is good. I'm struggling to find something to laugh at. I mean, there's a legitimate confirmed story from the New York Times about the president's son having a laptop that probably had business dealings with a sketchy oil company in the Ukraine. There is a war happening in the Ukraine with Russia that may result in World War III. That will undoubtedly involve us because we're part of the world. What's going on? And then we got the actual president and the press secretary and everyone else denying its very existence in the first place. Who's doing what? Who's pulling the strings? Why do we give a shit if Jussie's free still? Are you starting to comprehend why he's such a fucking he's a trigger for me? He's a trigger. He's a trigger for me. I can't believe he is a microaggression. He's a macroaggression. I don't know if I'm using all the words right. But he is one of the things that I just don't think you're allowed to talk about. There, I have found my line of censorship. I thought I was vehemently opposed to censorship of any kind. Turns out that is not the case. I am deeply in support of censorship as long as it is solely directed at the rights of a one Juicy Smollett. Juicy Smollett. Juicy, do you smell it? Is that his name? I don't know. Let's go with gay Huey Newton. Point is, there isn't a point, I guess. I need to stop saying point is because you run out of steam when you go on little tangents because you get all fired up. You think you're making good points, and you are, hopefully, and then you realize there isn't one. Because like we found out when I did the little left-right analogy, I don't think there is a point. I think the point is that there isn't one. It's very chaotic. I think the point is kind of Roscoe's wetsuit. I think the point is the Ballad of Aubrey Lear. I think the point is that. There isn't one. There is just people doing shit. And that's why it's so important. You can't get lost in theory. You can't get lost in the gleeful, ignorant pursuits of academia, absurdity, comedy, podcasting. Shut your mouth and go to the front lines. We don't have time for your opinions. We don't have time for your MacBook because World War III is going to happen any second now. How about we actually try and solve that problem? Because you got people like Elon Musk whose baby mama is now dating Chelsea Manning. Haha, how about that? But people like Elon Musk, who a lot of people say is our Tony Stark, he's our best hope at a clean future with renewable energy. Do you know a lot of your energy still comes from coal-burning smokestacks? Do you know where your energy comes from, or your batteries? Where do batteries end up in the world? Do they end up in the ocean too? All I'm saying, a lot of people think Elon's the dude. He's our guy. He's a genius. He's our best shot at figuring it out. And all this idiot keeps doing, besides getting left for Chelsea Manning, is talking about sending a guy to a different planet. Fix this planet first, please. If you're that good at it, if you can sell PayPal, if you can come from a family of South African slavers and invent Bitcoin, try and fix here first before we send someone to fucking Mars. Just because you took the time to write an entire charter outlining a parliamentary government in which you are the king of, probably, I would assume, you alien fuck. Fix here first. How many homeless people are in Austin, Texas? Can you build them a house before you build a fucking house on Mars? Would you mind? The latest news, and everyone's heard Elon's like, yeah, we're going to Mars, who cares? But now the latest news out of Elon, he gave us a brand new timetable because Elon Musk's timetables are about as reliable as the dude who invented the Jehovah's Witnesses. They just keep moving the motherfucking goalposts. But now, according to Elon, we're sending a dude to Mars within 7 years. Wouldn't it be funny if the reveal in 7 years from now is that Elon 100% is able to send someone to Mars? It's just that man is him. And he's fucking outie, leaving us to burn in a pit of hellfire and $25 gasoline, which, because of its price, will continuously feed the hellfire. And he will be on Mars with Chelsea Manning and Grimes and their child, tip, clack, 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 keyboard space, backspace. I don't know. There is something to his kids, his kids' names like a cheat code to Final Fantasy XYZ, or his name's like Kyle XY or whatever the fuck, but there is probably something to that name. And I know you all think I'm just being a silly goose when I say Elon's an alien, and I am. He's probably not an alien. The dude pays his taxes, maybe. So, can't be aliens wouldn't pay taxes. They're aliens. Be sensible. But I kind of really do think a full, legitimate gun to my head 25% that he is actually from a different planet. Strongest evidence I have for that is literally his face, so I concede it is not my best argument, and it might be one of my hottest takes, but I genuinely believe, under threat of violence, that there is a not 0% chance he's from a different planet. And with all of these stories about him saying we're going to Mars, we're doing this, we're digging underground, we're building tunnels, we're sending a guy to Mars again, I'm writing a government for what's going to happen when we get up there in Mars, I think his plan is to just go back. I think his plan is to piece the fuck out on us. If he's this smart and can figure it out, and he's choosing not to fix any of the shit around him, and he keeps talking about sending a guy to Mars, maybe he hasn't figured it out yet, and that's his plan. He sees how fucked it all is, and he's like, I gotta figure out how to get out of here. And if you are not Elon Musk, you do not have the brain capacity, you do not come from a family of rich African slavers, you did not invent PayPal or Bitcoin, you don't have the ability to build a rocket to send you to a different planet, unless you're a Mormon, and a good one at that, in which case they'll take care of the planet part. So you have to work with what you got, what's in your toolbox. Can you read? Can you breathe? Can you walk? Can you chew gum at the same time? None of that's going to help when you're sent to the front lines of wherever this world war may be. But it is important in times of great uncertainty, and an uncertainty, a very specific type of uncertainty, that will very much any moment now have an actual impact on your life. I'm talking the type of impact where you get a call, you gotta go somewhere, or someone now lives in your house. Someone pulls up and starts quartering an MF. The best thing for you to do would be identify what you can do and what you can do well, because things are changing, and probably not for the better. But there is very clearly an organized effort underway Whether or not that effort includes, let's say, Russia's, provocation and occupation and motherfucking war. Call it what it is, war in the Ukraine. I'm not saying there's a group of people that said, now we will have Russia invade the Ukraine so we can do that. But there is always a group of people immediately coming up with an idea in how they can benefit from a great calamity, from a disaster. Because you never let a good disaster go to waste. That, of course, is the quote of Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago. His brother, the brother of Rahm Emanuel, just in case you didn't know, his brother's Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel is the character that Ari Gold from Entourage is based off of. And just to pop that balloon for you, if you ever hear an interview with Jeremy Piven being Jeremy Piven, boy, does that ruin the character for you. But I digress. Ari Emanuel just made $380 million this year. That was reported. That was actually news. The most powerful agent in Hollywood at a time when Can You Name a Movie coming out has made almost $500 million representing people. That's not even a job. That's not a thing. You can't represent a person. What does that actually mean? What is it really? I know legally there's a definition, but also fuck off. You are just the guy who acts the most confident in a business completely made up where no one really knows what's going on. And I, while everyone gripes that Hollywood's fake and this and that, it is. But I also think it is an excellent microcosm of everything else. All of this is made up. Laws are made up. Nothing is really that tangible besides your need to eat, sleep, shit, fucking repeat. Apart from that, the idea that we won't do this or we're not allowed to do that is made up. We all agree to do it. We all agree to follow it. But it seems like a lot of people are starting to get really iffy on that concept. In a whole host of scales and levels. From the very tops of governments getting iffy on that and deciding to invade countries to just everyday folk debating the issues and merits of the victimhood of Jussie Smollett. For the love of Christ, will we stop talking about him? It's getting a little iffy with what we all agree on. People are starting to disagree more than ever about things I never even thought were up for debate. And that's what it is. That I don't think that's changing anytime soon. How many times have a civilization throughout history looked like they were experiencing what was clearly a decline and then turned it around and had a renaissance? A renaissance. A renaissance. Probably hasn't happened a ton. I mean, you could argue some countries in Europe, but they've just been there forever and the names are still the same. So not really the same fucking group of people or anything. So the odds that everyone becomes academically enlightened 5 years from now and starts reading books and becomes just generally more moderate all around, probably very, very slim. Much more likely is the fact we will be living something very close to All Quiet on the Western Front in our own way, only this time documenting it all on TikTok, which is, of course, a social media app that continues to grow in use and popularity here in America and was originally and always still is up until this very fucking second a instrument of Chinese communism. A brand of Chinese communism that is not in bed with Russia. A communist China that's just now starting to consider maybe teaming up with Russia. Anytime Russia and China agree to team up on anything, you should panic. Because Russia's big and China's smart. And the thing they share is a dislike of us. And based on what we're talking about and what we're doing and what we're hung up on, preoccupied with, what we seem to care about more than anything else, I have a hard time blaming China and Russia. I have a very hard time blaming them for thinking we suck a little. We don't suck. To be clear, our potential is limitless. That's not to sound corny, but it is. It truly, really is. It's the power of being a human. That's why you're not an animal. That's the separate thing from you and that. But doesn't feel like a lot of people think that or even are aware of that. In fact, it feels like a lot of people are going out of their way to make sure people are not aware of that fact. Because we're talking about stupid shit like Jussie. Oh my God, see, I can't even stop doing it. We got to really sniff out bullshit. We have to realize what we're good at We have to realize what other people are good at, and we have to do that. We have to do that for ourselves. We have to do that for others. Because if you're like me and you can feel that there is some coordinated effort going on where some group of something, probably doesn't have a name, has come up with a whole bunch of little plans, little systems, little schemes that will benefit them and definitely indirectly hurt you, maybe they're not responsible for military intervention like Russia and the Ukraine, but they definitely came up with a whole lot of plans and economic, strategies that benefit them because that's happening now. Take, for example, the fact people just this past year made more money from the value of their homes. And in case you don't understand how having a house works, when they made value in their home, unless they're still living in that home, the value has gone up artificially, which means it could go right back down as soon as hopefully everything comes back to normal, if that ever happens. Literally, please, I hope. Or they made value in their house this past year because they sold their house. Now they have that money, but they have no house. And as money continues to rise, or decrease, I guess, in its value is the right word. Inflation is what I'm getting at. If the inflation continues and our own government said it's going to get worse, we expect at least 25% worse. Congratulations, you made all this money from the value of your house. Now that value, that money has just less value. In fact, it has probably the same amount of value that you had when you bought your house. Only the difference is now you don't have a fucking house, okay? Those people made more money, funny money, if you will, from their home that they lived in already. And if they sold it, they don't have a house. And they made more money from that than the thing they do with their time every day that gives them purpose as a human being. As the thing that they do so they can pay their taxes. You would think the government would have an incentive in making sure that stays on track. At least they're taking our tax money. There is an effort of very organized chaos being just fucking let loose. The way to combat that, like I said, would be to understand what you're good at, do it for yourself, for a select few, other people, that you could trust, family members, friends, people that you love, people that, might cast empire. And then you offer to stage a hate crime as an example of just how provocative your one-man shows can be. Or, I don't know, if that doesn't work, you get at bitch a couple of secrets.